We have a special treat today as we have a chance to chat with the man who is really at the core of one of the most inspiring, compelling docu-series ever shown on Netflix or any of the other streaming services. In fact, when my son and I were watching Last Chance U and the story of East LA College led by Coach John Mosley, I said to him before the series was over, I've got to talk to this coach. This guy is incredible. And so in studio with me is my friend Brent Ferris, who is a pastor working with young people at Hopevale Church in Saginaw. And what a thrill it is for us to welcome on Coach John Mosley from East LA College. Coach, how are you?
Doing well, Bill, Brent. Thanks for having me, man. This is most exciting because, sometimes I have to guard my words in terms of what comes from the heart, because I don't want to offend anybody, right? But, what flows from the heart, what I took in this morning, it can freely flow out now. So I really get excited about it. Everybody asks, where's your passion? Where does all that come from? Well, it comes from my faith and what I believe, and truly it's to share the message of the good news. And the only way you can do that is by having compassion. Like, Coach, how do you care about the kids? Well, there's a compassion here, that the same compassion Christ had for me when I was lost. So,
Coach, how different is your life today from what you thought it might be whenever you said, okay, Netflix, come on in and bring all those cameras with you?
You know what? I don't, it's not as much of a difference other than being busy with communicating the message that I've always had. Everybody's, they're like, oh, this is a great story, a great message. Well, it's been my message and my mission for 20 years. It just so happened to get a platform. However, I am surprised of the level of encouragement and outpouring that, hey, and I'm surprised, and it's bittersweet in the sense that there's a lot of people that are saying I've encouraged them to be more bold about their faith, and not that it's a bad thing, but I'm like, man, I'm really burdened. Like, have we really traded places? Have the Christians really got in the closet and had a quiet faith now? And for people to say that, I feel like, oh my goodness, is there a target on my back now? Because I was just being authentic. Like, I was just saying what was on my heart and doing I was just doing me. And I told the Netflix people, I said, I don't know if I'm gonna be entertaining enough, because I'm not gonna do anything, I can't be entertaining as those other coaches. But, God had his hand on it. So I think I'm more surprised that, like, wow, man, we are hurting, not only as a country, but we're hurting in the body of Christ to stand up. When there's 1,000 voices. Now there's all these interest groups, and you got all these interest groups that may not align with what the Bible says. And it's almost like we're being smothered, our voices being smothered. And this is a time where they're really attacking our voice. They're kind of like poking at us, and they're trying to grab everybody. Come on, we can get them now. We can get the believers now. Come on, you guys. And there's still some that are kind of worried. Like, can we get them now? Is it time? Is it time to really attack Christianity? And they're saying, oh, we can really attack them. Look, let's just say this and see what happens. Oh, they're not saying anything. The Christians are saying, let's attack them more. Come on. And I feel like it's just kind of scary, like that's happening. And we gotta push back before we're losing our voice,
Well, Coach, that's one of the things that I was wondering about in your experiences in front of cameras, because here you are in Los Angeles. I would kind of view that as one of the more liberal parts of our nation. And you're sharing your passion and your faith with these young men, and you're not holding anything back. I kept waiting for the ACLU lawyers to come running out from the back hallway to say, "What do you think you're doing, man?" Did you ever catch any heat for sharing your faith?
You know what? I'll say this. I put out just as much is that comes to me. So I think as we go through the show, like I love how they captured how we're in the van. And while we're in the van, the players all the time, they give me their cell phone. Coach, here's the aux cable. Plug this song in. We want to hear this song. I'm like, fine, go ahead. I said, but for every song you play, and I have a song as well I want to play. And I think the players were never uncomfortable. Nobody that's with me they're never uncomfortable with me and who I am, because I allow them to be who they are.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what happens. And it's never been a question, because I allowed everybody to be who they are, and I'm not uncomfortable. I mean, I understand the world that we live in. So go ahead, fellas, do what you guys want to do. But just know that as many, the B and the hoe that you talk about, you slept with last night, I'm going to share with you how me and my wife, how we prayed and how we celebrated and how we went to church and what happened. So I think it's only fair, right? Like, if you're going to share that, and if a player is going to play that song. Now, here's the problem. So when they give me their song, right, it's not my fault that your artist is only got a 4-minute long song. So me, I have a praise and worship. I got a spontaneous praise and worship song that's 8 minutes. That's your fault,
It's one song for one song.
Yeah, it's one for one. So
that's the deal.
Yeah, that's the deal. That's on you. If you find a song that's 8 minutes, go ahead,
Coach.
And I think that's what's happening. And so a lot of people say, well, aren't you afraid? And my pastor is the one that eventually convinced me, because I'm assuming, okay, we got to have what we do for others. We need to kind of do it quietly and secretly, right? And God will reward us openly, and our reward is in heaven. So I came with that mindset to my pastor, and I said, hey, should I do this? And he's like, oh yeah. And I'm thinking like, what? I might get fired. I might say something to get fired. He's like, no. You predestined. God has called you. And if he closes the door there, he'll open the door in another space. So that kind of convinced me at the end. I was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. And when God calls you to do something, when he truly calls you to a ministry or something, all of a sudden I tell everybody the days or weeks prior to starting the film, and then days and weeks prior to the show airing, I literally crawled up in my bed. This is really, a moment of like, Lord, I've literally crawled up and almost crying, and I'm shivering like, Lord, what did you have me to do? I was like, my life was perfect. had my kids, and, I had gotten over, as adults, as a 20-year-old, I would welcome, hey, let me see all the cameras. Hey, but I had gotten over all that, and I realized, you know what, let me live out my faith with my family and the church and serve and just all that. But then all of these cameras show up. I guess God said, okay, now we can bring the cameras now that you've gotten over yourself, John,
Oh, man.
And I'm shivering like, Lord, what did I do? I just exposed my family to all of this. And what am I doing? And I'm like literally shivering and balled up in the bed twice. I'm sweating. I'm serious. I'm like literally sweating like some of, those great leaders. And I'm sitting up here like, Lord, shivering. Not even my wife or, I'm sharing with the world now. But, at the moment, I'm just like, what am I doing? Why did you call me? Why did you have me to, I'm questioning God, like, why did you have me do this? And I'm thinking like, there's no way that anything is going to come out of this, because there's too much exposed. There's too much I said. I'm going to offend so many people. And you know what? God had his hand on the whole production, man. And the right things were in and the right things were out. So, all I could just say is God was in control. And like my pastor say, if the door closes here, then he's still going to provide for my family. I mean, really, that's the only thing that matters, is if God provides, right? I've gotten over, trying to be just letting basketball just be my career. It's really a ministry. And he's allowed me to coach during the ministry, So I'm just nervous, man. I hope he don't close the door and say, okay, you got a pastor at church now. There's no way. I'm scared. I'm scared of that. That's the one thing I'm afraid of. So.
Well, and you did such a great job. I mean, the observation from afar is seeing you intersect with being in the world and not of the world. And what a beautiful job you did with these young men who come at you with all of that.
It's a rough crowd.
And well, yeah,
It's
it's a little bit of the basketball culture, if we're being honest. I mean, it's something we know. If you know basketball, there is this culture, this tough-headed mentality of I am the best, and yet you're coming in and saying, but there's something better than being the best. It's being the humble best, and that was just so beautiful. I just want to encourage you in that. It came across to me from in Michigan on screen, and just how you intersected with these guys and really everybody. And I really your team of coaches too, and the way that those guys, they're for you and you are for them, and that really came across too, that it really is a team that you guys are being.
And Coach, just to kind of piggyback on what Brent was saying, I want everybody who's at all aware of what the sports world looks like to understand that, for instance, we just got through the Final Four, and these are huge programs in billion-dollar industries, TV timeouts, and all of the. They're flying private, they're flying charter. These guys are. This is big-time college basketball, but the young men who are playing for Gonzaga and for Michigan and for UCLA and what, they're not putting in any more hours than Coach Mosley and the kids at East LA. They just are on a larger platform. And I have to think, Coach, you certainly can straighten this out if I'm off. I got to think that kids are kids, whether they're playing at East LA or at UCLA, that they have similar needs, similar beliefs, sometimes similar delusions of grandeur as to where they're headed, and similar need for a positive male influence in their lives. Is there any difference between junior college and D1 in that regard?
No, they come with the same issues. The only difference I would say is those guys that are at the 4-year level, they've earned the right in some ways to be there. So they've done some things. Maybe they're a little bit better as a player, a little bit better academically, one less mistake where they've earned the right to be there. So they've learned something a little more than some of the young men that are at our level. The majority of the men at our level, there's something that kept them at our level or has them at our level. Not all of them. There may be one or two that's great kid, great family, great grades, good player, but they're at the community college. But the majority of who we have has maybe one or two mistakes or one issue. But in terms of what the inner conflict of these young men are going through, it's the same. They need the same level of mentorship. They need the same level of love put on them. At the university level, they may have a better meal plan. So that helps. That helps them come with a better attitude. They know at least they're going to eat 3 meals a day. With me, they hope Coach Mosley's got the fundraise money so we can go get a Subway sandwich or something, so that helps. The resources they have, it helps. But the inner conflict that's going on with all the young men, the resources only mask the issues that are going on with the young men all over the world, young women that are all over the world in sports, people who are in sports. It just masks it, just like even with NBA guys. You got millions of dollars. It helps cover up. It helps cover up what's going on. Because if you don't like something for the day, okay, let me go get self-satisfaction in some way. Let me spend my money to get some temporary satisfaction. Okay, that doesn't work. I still got money to get these temporary fulfillments, But for a young man at my level, they don't have the ability. They can't afford it. They don't have the resources. We don't have the resources to give them temporary fulfillment. So what happens is they act out even more because there's no temporary fulfillment, which is actually a good place for salvation because they're all running around searching. And that's what I found. I was just sharing with somebody. I came in here and I looked around. It was kind of like a quick stop job. I was going to go back to Division I. And I looked around. I said, there's nobody that cares about them. So I did have a platform to minister. And when a guy was looking at me who never heard somebody share what can help them beyond money, what can help them beyond having a good basketball game, what can help them beyond just the scholarship. You know, as I was sharing with Deshaun, and I'm gonna tell you something, it was a good job, because maybe it may have been offensive if I was over the top, but in all of those little segments when I was sharing with those young men, I shared scripture, because I wanted to make sure it was Bible based, and they cut it up, and that's fine. But I shared scripture, and as I shared with Deshaun, I shared the peace. And you notice that several times I kept sharing with those guys peace. And, you know, and maybe they cut it, but I was sharing with them the peace that passes all understanding. Yeah. All these guys have this inner conflict. And then I would go to scripture and we would share with them the how do we get this peace? And maybe they cut it off, because ultimately I was sharing the gospel in all of those moments. If you want that, if you want to be calm, if you want to go to sleep at night, Deshaun, if you want to have that inner peace, here's how you get it. And now you can go to sleep. Money doesn't put you to sleep. Smoking weed won't put you to sleep. Laying next to, you know, whoever won't put you to sleep. That's only temporary. Here's what puts you to sleep, where you can go to bed and sleep a good 7 to 8 hours, is Christ, is having him in your heart and letting him take control of the inside and breaking up the inner conflict of what's going on. You deciding and letting him direct your life. That's what we were able to do here. And I feel like it's a platform to do it here, because nobody cares. The high school, you have the parents who still, they're kind of guiding them, right, until they get out of the house. The university level, you really, you know, there's so much in regards to they've been given a platform, or they earned the right to be there, whether it's academics or on an athletic scholarship or something like that. So they're kind of protected by the philosophies and the attention of the college and the universities. They have an interest in them because they're on television as far as athletics, or academically, they've earned the right to be there. At the community college, nobody's caring. Nobody's talking about them even during the pandemic.
I remember you laying down the challenge to one of the boosters, and they wanted to put a pie in your face. And you said, the only way this is going to happen is if you fill this gym. I'm only going to do it if you get, I think, 250 people to come in here and watch this game, because you got these guys that are working their tails off. And like you said, nobody's paying attention. Nobody's coming. And they're really good, by the way. I mean, they're at the time like 17-1 or something like that. And Brent, I don't know if you saw this part during the series, but there was a time at which there was a question about whether they would be able to make the road trip to the playoffs, because the school didn't have the funding. And Coach Mosley said, you know what, we'll put it on my credit card. Yeah. Which leads me to my next question. What did Mama Mosley have to think about that particular strategy?
Hey, well, she just saw it when the show came out, but you know, she's not happy. Hey, I'll tell you what, she's gonna be like, you better make sure you figure out how to get it reimbursed. But you know, but you know what? She's been I call her my roll dog, and I know we'll probably talk about that in a bit, but you know what? She from the beginning has understood that the impact that we're trying to have, and I'm trying to have on some of these young men's lives, and that sometimes it takes a sacrifice, and she doesn't like it, but she understands, and she gives me the blessing to go ahead, but you better figure out how to get it back, you know, or you better get it back some way. So it was unfortunate. We had gotten word, and it was just like, well, no, we don't have the money to go. And I'm just like, you know, my athletic director came and told me that he talked to some administrators, and it was very disheartening because you get it was almost like a punishment for being good, you know. It was almost a punishment for the guys, you know, and sometimes it can be that way. And I don't even want to go there, because now you get into politics, right? It's like the country is being suppressed into one. Anyway, I don't want to go there. Okay. So we're all trying to, you know, we don't want to go there, but it was almost like it was a punishment for having success. All of the players are over a 3.0 GPA. All of them got their degrees, and all of them moved on and trained. And it was almost like it was no reward for doing that. And so I was really disappointed. And I was like, there's no way that I am allowing these young men to make all the sacrifices they made, and for someone to say that there's no money to support that. And so you mean to tell me there's no value on the commitment that these young men made, that we can't find the funding? That was disappointing to me.
Yeah.
And hey, I'm so grateful to Netflix and Last Chance U, because they cut out a lot more and I had a lot more to say about that.
Yeah.
You need another whole series on the outtakes, right?
Yeah, on the outtakes. And I'm so grateful, because we wouldn't be sitting here. I'd probably be looking for a job if everything that came out was on
Coach,
there.
I like your chances of finding a gig if you happen to need one at some point. I think you're in pretty good shape.
Well, it's not just the commitment to what they did, it's their follow through too.
Yes.
The players followed through. You know, you set a bar and they went for it. And that's what I loved about that whole scenario. The whole show really depicts this. Sometimes people just need you to set the bar.
Yes.
Because they don't know what potential they even have. Like nobody's even spoken into you what you are capable of.
You've dealt with that in youth ministry a lot of times, right? Where young people don't think that they have any support, anybody rooting for them, anybody believing in them. So let me ask both of you this question. How do you believe something into reality for a kid or a player when they really don't believe it about themselves?
Well, I'll say the relationship, you have to know what's going on in his life or her life. You have to know. If you don't know, you won't know how to attack whatever is preventing them from making progress. A lot of the response, everybody's looking at me, well, how do you handle the psychological with Joe Hampton, and how did you manage that and get him through? It was because with all 15 guys, and it's not just Joe Hampton or Deshaun, or it was 15 guys, but it's knowing what's really going on in their lives. We assume that he's just a poor example, or he's damaged goods in our society, but really society and different things. Do you really know what happened to Joe at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old? And then to be built up to be this great player, and then because you tear one ACL, the other ACL, and now the disappointment of losing all of the support that built you up. Meanwhile, you're a teenager and you're trying to process, where's my support at and my help? I'm no longer NBA capable because I tore two knees. Nobody has ever spoke the gospel possibly to me, other than a little bit, because everybody's infused the fact that I've been this great NBA player and now I tore 2 knees. Now you spiral, you look for something to fulfill that void, and now you smoke, which you talked about, and you drink, and you do women, and all those different type of things. And now there's a stereotype placed on you and say that's damaged goods. Right. There is a level of responsibility that you have to take at that age, but the damage, who's to teach him when he's 5 and 6 and 7 years old, what he's gone through, and being in a single parent home, not having enough support. And he's got to take some responsibility, but I'm not asking everybody to do it, but that's what God called me to do. Not like if you're a millionaire and you want to donate and help, fine. I'm just saying, if you want to help a young man like Joe Hampton, then you have to build a relationship and understand the conflict that he's going through and what happened. Now you can start to pull the layers off, and then I can minister and share the gospel to him. But until I know what he's going through, and I said it in there, rules without relationships equal rebellion. If I don't know what's going on, I cannot discipline him and tell him how to change if I don't know what happened. Once I know, now I have the compassion and the love of Christ. And as we saw in the Bible, as we look at Christ and when he approached people, and the reason why he was able to have that compassion is because he knew exactly what was going on. He knew what was going on with that woman at the well. He knew what was going on, and that's why he was able. He had compassion for those others, and I think that's just kind of, we have to have that love and that compassion and understand what's going on to be able to minister.
How much easier would life be if we all knew inherently what those storylines were behind the troubled, the hurting kid, So yes, Jesus did know the exact scenario of the woman at the well and the woman who touched his robe. And without having that divine knowledge ahead of time, both of you, Coach, you in a basketball sense and in a coaching sense, and Brent in a youth ministry sense, both of you are often called into situations where you don't have that background and you're praying for discernment, you're trying your very best, and every once in a while you miss the mark. You just didn't know. And I'm wondering how you come back from those moments, and if those kids in those situations, whether it's at a church or on a team, if the kids are so glad that somebody invested in them that they're willing to grant a little bit of forgiveness and leeway if you didn't happen to get it right the first time around.
I would say, Coach is talking. First, there's a plug in there. If you are a millionaire listening to this and you want to send Coach money, he will put it to good use. I'll also plug myself. Like, I promise I'll be good with that money. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, just say, no, but there is a level of the relational equity. I mean, the depth of relationship equals the depth of content. And if I don't see you, if you feel like you're just a project to me, I'm going to miss the mark. It doesn't matter what's going on.
So in other words, you're saying if Coach comes across as only caring about Joe's low post talents,
correct,
then Joe's going to know that the coach is just using him for basketball success.
And it's almost evident when you watch this, you see this, and there's so much about you that we could spend hours just to ask you about life. But there's basketball. Correct me if I'm wrong, basketball is the second part of your job. Your wife talks about it. You talk about these guys are your ministry, and basketball just happens to be the place you get to do it in. I would say ministry for me, it wouldn't matter what context I'm in. I just get to do it in a church context. But the students, these young people, they're the ministry. The point is, I actually do care about you. I love that you left the Division I scenario and you're like, you know what? I kind of love being here. Like, I just love this. I love these people. I love these guys, and I love them for who they are, not who I think they should be. And then there's that intersection of the gospel in there.
Yeah, that's powerful. Now, Coach, there was a time, and I know that both of you have experienced this as well, where in your case, Coach, the players, they weren't into it. They weren't listening. They weren't practicing hard, and you were ticked. And you were ticked to the point, I think it was back in the locker room, where you just kind of went off on them. Not in a profane way, but you said, I am missing my daughter's game for this. I am missing my son's game for this. I want to be home with my family, and I'm here with you, and you don't even care. And you were going to town on them. And Brent, that's certainly happened at youth activities when you're cranking up in front of 60 or 90 kids and you just kind of want to be at home snuggling with the little ones or with your wife. How do both of you handle those moments where your heart is torn because there is a high calling to being the husband, the dad, and to being that presence at home? Coaching and youth work demand a sacrifice of time. And Coach, I don't know if you want to go back to that exact scene of that moment or just kind of talk about it in general, but I have to think that that's a constant tug of war.
Yeah, and I'll clear something up because a lot of people put comments, well, don't put that on the kids. That's your job. Yeah, you're right. It's my job. But at the moment, there is a level of commitment that was put into there. It was in context to the commitment that the coaches are making. So they were complaining about these weights. Like, yeah, after the game, we could have just went home. But they're saying, so why are we lifting after the game? You're complaining. We're trying to keep your strength up. Okay. Now, for a coach to strategically plan and do that, there's a level of commitment that I have to say, we have these extra components that maybe some of the other programs aren't doing. And this is the reason why guys are graduating, moving on, and good things are happening, is because the coaches are making these extra little small commitments. And you guys are mad at me for asking for extra. You mad at me for this level of commitment. And really, I can take less of a commitment and be with my son and my daughter and take away some of the commitment and spend it with my family. So we're making an even commitment. And so the point was like, you're acting like I'm asking for something that I'm not committed to as well. Like, it takes commitment for me to put this plan together and to care enough to say, let's do these extra things that's going to help us get over the hump. And there is a level of an unappreciativeness, which I'm okay with. I get it. but there's times that the point needs to be made. And so, you know, the next year, the next season, I'm gonna have to make the same point over and over again. So it wasn't just one defining moment. They caught that on camera. I mean, I make the same point. I probably say the same thing every day, but we keep pressing that and keep planting those seeds that there's a level of commitment that you have to have. And yeah, I'm torn away from family and torn away from, you know, the commitment I'm doing there. And so I'm torn, and I'm like, and I had to get upset for that moment, because the kids were joking like, Coach, you're still sweating. Like, we won the game, Coach. And I said, you want to know what my concern is? My concern is getting you where you need to be. And you guys are getting upset with me for the commitment that we're making. And that's the concern I have. And so I think that was the whole point. And it just hit it ahead. I had it bothering me. And we were like, hey, let's go family on 3. And then they were joking like, Coach, you still sweating? You okay? And I said, okay, since you want to know, yes, I am bothered.
Yeah.
You know, and I think one of the players, Deshaun, said, oh gosh, here we go.
Yep.
He spent a talk an hour, and he was right. You want to know? Okay, here you go. So, but yeah, the level of commitment we make in ministry and outside of, you know, our families, there's even a level of commitment in ministry. And I feel for pastors, man, and those are committed to the ministry, because people it may be a job to some degree, but we are giving up our lives to make it extra commitment. You know, we have to go and consecrate ourselves and prepare ourselves to go out into ministry. There's a preparation level. All of those, we have to spend time in prayer. We have to do these things outside of our family time, when we can spend all of that ministry energy into our family, but we're taken away from our families as well. And we're trying to balance that, because God says we have to take care of the home first. And so it's tough, but he also calls us to have compassion, and our families understand that we have a level of ministry and that there is a sacrifice we do as leaders in the body of Christ, you know.
But how do you, both of you, how do you learn how to set those boundaries? Because you have to have some boundaries.
Yeah. You also have to have very clear communication with your teammate, which you don't get to see a lot of, because this commitment, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, Coach. So you remember the days when the love tank is never full. There's never enough time to give to everybody. And that sacrifice that you're talking about is so true. And you don't get credit for that as a leader. You don't get credit for doing your job, but it is extra. It is a conversation you have to, hey, I'm going to be gone because we're at this weightlifting thing that we got, but like the thing that I always get fired up on, and particularly in the scene that I can resonate with, is there's a commitment that I sometimes feel like as a leader or a head coach that I'm more committed to your future than you are. Like, I feel like I'm sacrificing more for you than you are sacrificing for yourself. And that for me is so hard to deal with. And then I get fired up and I'm like supposed to be like, well, you're a pastor. It's like, well, yeah, sure. But like, I'm still mad. Like, I'm still angry at you. Why am I more committed to you than you're committed to you? And again, it just, that's the thing that is like, it just gets me fired up as well. So like, again, I'm watching the show. I'm like, I resonate with this guy, like cut from the same cloth. I get him. Because if you've ever been in that scenario where you're seeing more in somebody and you said you wanted this.
Yes.
And so now I'm trying to put you in a position to get it, and you're complaining to me. Do you know what I'm missing out on? Because I got what I got and I'm happy with what I got, but I'm trying to help you get what you want. And you know who has to deal with that? My kids.
Right.
You know, we were talking before you got on, I give up a Sunday every week of my kids' lives. Once a week, I miss a whole day of my kids' lives to help other people's kids know Jesus.
Yeah.
And you don't get credit for that because it's your job, but it's still a sacrifice. It's still part of the gig that you got to talk about before you get into ministry or coaching. I'm assuming there's days you got to be gone. You got to talk about it before you get into it.
Yeah. And Coach, you got to walk that line so that someday your kids don't resent what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. You know, we got the rebellion, and we always question, why are the PK kids the ones that, you know, are in some cases are the worst. And I think that level of resentment where, and I found myself drifting a couple times, and I said, wait a minute, hold on, my kids love sports and why aren't I pouring just as much, if not more, into my kids than I'm pouring into others with all the facets of life, with education, with spiritually, with just all the things that they need to grow into young people or young adults. Why am I not pouring into them the same? And, it's just me and my son. And then I got my wife. I got my wife and my 2 daughters. But my son, as a young man, sometimes I'll find myself drift off and I'm so invested in others. And I will watch examples and things in the past of especially men investing in other men's life, and then they leave their son behind. And the son is kind of sitting there like, well, man, you love those guys more than you love me, your own son, only son. And, me, myself, reminding myself, my son is just him in the house. He doesn't have a brother. My daughters got each other and they got my wife, kind of, that camaraderie between the ladies. And then my son, sometimes he'll be by himself. And I got to remind myself that I need to be his brother. Well, in a sense, I need to communicate with him in terms of a component of missing a brother, not having a friend in the home. I'm already a father, so that component is there. But I got to remember he needs that communication. So now I got to be I have to add 2 more components to just being a father, because he doesn't have a brother. He doesn't have a friend there. My daughters have sisters and they have a brother. He has a sister. Of course, I can't be the sister, but so those are all the little nuances that I have to remember, and I get convicted about it. I think the biggest thing is, as close as we are to God, we should have a level of conviction if our goal is to glorify God first through the marriage, realizing that our marriage and our family is an example for what God called us to be, not only as a family, but in our society. And I think that was displayed, and I got to not lose sight, man. I got to not lose sight, and it's very hard.
Especially as you're dealing with a team of young men who in many cases come from homes with only one parent, and they're watching. They're watching, Coach, more than just the way you demonstrate a drill or yell at them to run some more sprints. They're watching to see how you manage that relationship at home, because they came from one that was lousy and served them very poorly. And of all of the pressures that you deal with in the coaching role, I don't know, I kind of like to think that perhaps the most intense pressure is to make sure that they understand that you have a firm commitment to Mrs. Mosley, and that this not going anywhere, wins or losses or recruiting trips or shutdowns or COVID or anything, that relationship is going to come first and foremost at all times. They're watching that very closely.
Bill, I think that gives me the best credibility. So I talk about having a relationship with the players, but at the same time, those players are listening because they see foundation. They see a family foundation. They see on the outside, watching the example of me fearing God and me living out my faith through my family. And I think without sometimes even having, having a clear picture of what's going on in the young man's life, they'll trust me because they say, well, he's a man of God. He's a man with a family. I'm watching how he's treating his own children, how he's treating his wife, and even the parents. When maybe I go out and recruit, some of the parents are like, you know what, this is a good place for my son to be, because they just see the family. They don't even know how the family is, but the family somehow represents something of a togetherness or a credibility. Even if in some cases, everybody wants to throw out Christ, but the family in itself represents what God called us to be in the beginning. And when people see that, that gives us a level of credibility. And then when it's functioning well, that just adds to the credibility for me to be able to speak out. What's crazy is, here's the thing. So I can go to the store with a hoodie on and kind of some sweats, and I can kind of get the side eye, like, okay, what is he going to do? And man, I can go and I go by myself and people's looking around. What's crazy is when I go with my wife, and then all of a sudden there's just a different look. They see me with a wife, or I can go with my children, and there's a level of respect when people know that you're taking care of a family. there's just a level of respect and there's a level of trust. People trust you better. And, you know, when I first got married, I used to take my wife to some recruiting trips. And I used to be like, no, they just trust me better because I got a wife. They trust me. But if you're looking at a young man in his 20s and 30s and, you know, like he's a decent looking young man, they're like, I don't know if I can trust him. What's he out there doing? But if they see I got a wife and I got a ring on my finger, and that's, well, I don't have my ring on now, but if they see you got a ring, there's a level of trust because there's a commitment here. Even outside of looking at it, I don't want to drift off from the body of Christ, but even outside of that, when they see it, they see, well, there's a commitment there.
Yep.
And so I think family is important. And a lot of people have spoken, even out there in the world, if we can show, it's the family dynamics, man. If we're going to save this country in any way, we need to start at home with the family and show togetherness, show how the families are being brought up. Like if we want to talk about racism, and it starts at home, it starts all of that. Any of those agendas that are out there in the world, if we have the right examples of family, then all of that else, now the ones who lead the family, they go out and set other examples. And I just think that's where it starts. That's where the credibility and the trust starts.
You know, Coach, time is flying by. We're going to wish we had 3-hour block carved out with you. But so let me do this as we kind of head down the home stretch. Let me throw you some quick questions and maybe some quick answers that are connected directly to the series, if that's okay. Then we got a special surprise for you at the end, a regular segment that we do on our Church Pew Sports podcast. But first, quick question for you just about the series. Would you do it again? Would you say yes again to the cameras, to the intrusion, to the 24/7 surveillance?
You know what? I'm 50-50 because I'm afraid after what I've seen and I've dissected it, I'm afraid I don't want to lose authenticity, you know, by trying to act out something because I know what it could or what it should look like now. So I think I tried to be authentic and I said, I'm gonna just ignore everything and I'm gonna be myself, you know, a little bit of hood, you know, I'm from the hood, but at the same time, I'm a professional. And then at the same time, I'm a man of faith. So that would be hard. So I'm a little 50-50 on that. Would I do it? But then at the same time, God, you know, we make plans and then God laughs, right? So
right.
He may have bigger plans. He may have bigger plans than me worried about how I feel, you know, or what I think. So yeah, I'm 50-50 if it's up to me. Yeah.
We heard the story during the national title game of Scott Drew coming to Baylor in 2003 to a program that was a disaster from a moral standpoint, from a legal standpoint, and all those things. And what a wonderful job he's done to bring it now to a point of being a nationally dominant team. So if a D1 school in trouble calls Coach Mosley, does he take the call?
I would have to be able to do what I'm doing here, which means, you know, family. Of course, the opportunity may be more money. So of course that helps. But I've been saying never take money over the mission.
Yeah.
You know, and so I want to make sure, or take money over the message. So I want to make sure those two things can stay the same. The mission and the message can stay the same, and money doesn't do it. I would have to be able to do what I'm doing here, sometimes at the university level. And those guys and those coaches do a great job. They do all of it. Sometimes you can get lost because you'll lose your job if you don't win. That's a matter of fact. That's just bottom line. You're going to lose your job if you don't win at some point. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It doesn't matter. You're going to lose because you have to win. At that level, it's about marketing for the campus with television and all that. And so it's important to win, and I get it. So I don't think, and with that, will I lose sight? Because I'll grind. I'm a grinder. And I can get tunnel vision and lock in and do it, but at what expense? Getting tunnel vision. Now, date night suffers. You know, now me spending time with my son and helping him and my daughters. And so that's what I'm afraid of when you talk about a Division I offer. You know, of course, God can do amazing and wonderful things. You know, maybe God wants me to go to set an example of how it's done, being a believer. And I don't know, but I'm just afraid of that. I thank God that I've gotten a tenured position. So now financially, I'm starting to make, just in the last couple of years, starting to make enough to where I'm comfortable, and my wife almost, she can go home. So I'm okay financially. With not accepting a bigger financial offer, I'm okay with it. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
But I don't think so. I've been offered several opportunities
Yeah.
that just haven't fit right now.
When Netflix does what they did and bring in a series to a junior college, are the players in any way able to be somewhat compensated by Netflix for being a part of that? I don't know how that works.
No, not if they plan. Well, first of all, we weren't even compensated. And I think, it's an advantage for Netflix to how they title a production like that. And in the title, those productions they're just documenting. They're not giving us a script. We're not for hire, to a sense. We're not for hire. It's just they want to document our information and put it out there. And the pitch is, hey, it's going to help our program, which it does. It helps our campus. It helps our message. But our campus and our district and our school gets paid for just filming on campus, using the space to film on, and they document us. And so, we know that we're not going to receive any funding directly to each individual, but
that doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but
that doesn't seem right to me, Coach. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter
to the millionaire.
Well, we agreed to it, and I think the justification is prior to it. What would we have done to get our message
right
and market our campus? What would we have done on a greater platform than being in a documentary or a docuseries? So
not only that, the
gospel.
You got the gospel out there, Coach, and that's pretty.
Yeah,
cool. That's pretty.
Yeah, so that was a good message, and I probably, I wouldn't second guess it. Now, if it comes around again, I don't know. I may say, hey, you know what?
I'd like to think that at least that swoosh on your shirt might have a little dollar attached to it, but who knows? I mean, hindsight is always a little easier in 2020 vision. I want you to know that we have sought to do our part from here in Michigan by we went online and ordered a couple of T-shirts with that logo you have behind you, but they didn't get here in time for us to wear them for the interview. I wanted to surprise you with that. However, at the end of each episode of Church Pew Sports, we have a little segment we call the moment of holy discontent. Now, Brent, I want you to define that for the coach so he can really have a moment to give it some thought.
Yeah, just the thing that is bothering you in sports, in the world, and culture that you really just need a minute to say, and you don't have to defend it. It's just this is bothering me.
Blowing off some steam about anything that's in your craw right now. What do you got for your holy discontent?
Well, there's a lot, but but hey, that I can probably say in this space, but if it gets out, then I'm gonna be dealing with some other issues.
Sure.
But I will say, the culture of even in sports, I'm okay with having a voice, but we're just accepting every voice now. And so every voice that's speaking out, we accept it, and it's almost like we have to accept it. And sometimes it's not the right message. But because of social media, everybody has a voice and they can say whatever they want to say. And it's becoming more accepting, and it's very frustrating. And we have professional athletes, we have college athletes that are on this platform, and we need a little bit more responsibility with it. And sometimes we're being deceived. It sounds like a good message, but it's really not. It sounds like a positive, good message, but ultimately it's underlining and setting us up for failure in our country, setting us up for we're losing some of the values in our country. There's a lot of values being lost. And just because you have the platform doesn't mean that you could just say whatever you want to say and think it's going to fly, because it's sometimes for that moment, because an interest group takes that and says, well, this person said it, so we're going to ride it out. And you know what? We're going to make it a law now because everybody's saying it. And and I think I think we just need to be a little bit more responsible with our platform from our athletes, because they have a great voice right now.
Well, Coach, it has been a pleasure to just scratch the surface of the time that we easily could spend with you, doing a lot longer conversation. But thank you for standing for truth in a setting where that's not always honored, and that being the Netflix series. And thank you mostly, I think, Brent, I would say, for the impact you're having in the lives of young men, both those that were in the show and those that are going to be on this year's team or next year's team and on down the road. And just know that we hold you in high regard, high esteem. I don't buy t-shirts just from any school.
That's
I'm a Michigan
You
man.
are
So
a
for me to buy an
very-
ELAC t-shirt is a pretty
Yes,
big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, that's to God be the glory, man, and hopefully he can continue to get glory. You know, and several of my believers say that at some point we're just kind of looking around. We'll gird up for the persecution, possibly for what has happened, but maybe not. You know, maybe God says, nope, you're not going to be persecuted yet. I'm gonna put you on another platform, and then you'll be ready for that. So we'll see, man. Maybe God doesn't want to scare me too bad. He's like, no, I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let everybody pat you on the back so that you'll step out there and do more. So we'll see.
Maybe he's got more for you, man. Maybe he's got more for you.
You never know.
I love that you were given an opportunity to use your position and platform to share the gospel, and you did that. And there's so many people who wouldn't do that, and I love that.
Coach, thank you so much. Lord bless you, and we'll be watching.
Thanks. Thank you so much.